All right, George. So, one thing I was thinking about when we were talking about yesterday is if I'm actually going to be doing a documentary format on my story or doing anything for Out, I'm probably going to have to get a lot better at getting in front of the camera than I have been previously. So, I decided to go ahead and add another video message to this little document that I'd been putting together for a little while, trying to make my story more digestible for Katie. And I want to start out actually with a little synchronistic event. So I don't know if you have had a chance to look at any of the books that I sent you or know what a Jungian synchronistic event is, but it's the idea that coincidences are meaningful. I touched on it in the last video I sent you. So one of the reasons that I'm looking at getting into film is a few weeks back, over the course of a few weeks actually, a couple of coincidences happened. If you, I don't think I sent you the rejection letter that I got for my immigration packet to Israel, but the gist of that was we're not going to let you immigrate because your conversion wasn't good enough on the one hand. And on the other hand, you haven't been hanging around any Jews, which is kind of true, but not really. And then on the other hand, it was that I had said that Jesus was a valid candidate for being the Messiah. And that part actually pissed me off quite a bit. So I'd written a few blog posts about that. And one of those blog posts ended up being a comparison of Jesus to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who's, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a really famous rabbi. If you know about Chabad centers and stuff, you see him all over the world now. It's one of the largest faces of Judaism, religious Judaism that there is. And in making that blog post, I wanted to refer to a video that I had seen, a rabbi friend of mine had sent me, about a guy whose blindness had been healed by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, just like Jesus had gone out and healing and doing all kinds of miracles and stuff. So I asked of course I cannot find the video online. I have this condition called techno-demons where nothing technological works just when I need it to, according to some thematic reason. And so I asked my friend if I can get a hold of the video somehow. And I find a write-up, a written write-up of this video that I'd seen. And I hadn't looked at the whole scenario in a long time. And it turns out that this guy who had his blindness healed was in fact a New York film producer. That was one. That's Danny Finkelman. On the other hand, another thing that happened right about the same time, within a week or so, I had been looking at the films of a guy, Danny Abachazer, who's kind of a one-stop shop. You know, he does writing on his own a lot of the time. He acts in his own films. I think he produces his own stuff, directs his own stuff. And I've seen a lot of his movies. I got in touch with him, or I didn't get in touch with him, but I learned about him from actually following Gal Gadot on Instagram and got him on Instagram and followed his stories and stuff like that. He's had a really interesting career. And I was looking at one of his recent movies, The Perfect Gamble. And this was an interesting movie in its own right. But I guess to keep things short, I'll just say that I'm sitting in a Georgian food restaurant. Since I've been here in Cyprus, I've been hanging out at a lot of restaurants, doing my thinking and my writing and stuff like that. And I kind of developed this attachment for this waitress there who reminded me of my daughter. And it kind of became, for a long time, one of my local hangouts. And I'm sitting there looking at Danny Abachazer's film, The Perfect Gamble. And I find out that he filmed the thing in Georgia. Okay, well, part of it, Hungary and Georgia. And, I actually sent him a text, like, whatever. But then I look at him on Instagram, and he's doing an interview about The Perfect Gamble. Well, other films, but he mentions The Perfect Gamble. And they talk about shooting it in Georgia on Instagram, this interview. And he tells the guy, "Oh, I love the food." And so I'm like, I'm sitting in a Georgian restaurant following a filmmaker that I may want to get in touch with to learn about film and directing and writing from. And in a Georgian restaurant, and I'm a big aficionado of Georgian food. It's fantastic. I love it. Especially the chikmarouli chicken. It's amazing. And then I think it was right after that, I get in touch with you to talk some finance thing, when's the end of the world going to happen or something along those lines. And then we start talking about Katie, and Katie is, just recently graduated film school and is putting together a film company and is shooting shorts and music videos and wants to do a movie. And then we start talking about documentaries and stuff like that. So that kind of, these coincidences, they convinced me that it might be some kind of a sign, or, I should be looking in this direction. And that's one of the major themes that it was talking about the meaning of my story as being. But so anyway, just to start off with that coincidence, I then start going to figure out like how to make my story digestible for Katie. And we've talked about this a couple times. This thing might be, too much for her at this point. So let's see, I lost my track. I guess I shouldn't adjust my seat. Hang on, let me pause. All right, so I'm trying to figure out like what kind of a documentary would we make out of this to a normal, sane person that wants to make a documentary that people would see and relate to. Because for me, I see this thing as having multiple arcs. And in fact, I haven't gotten a lot of feedback on, what people get out of my story, because I can't get people to read it because nobody's got any time. Or anytime I decide hey, you want to read my stuff, people are like, well, you just want people to pay attention to you or whatever, that sort of thing. And well, when you have a story and you want to present it to a producer or director or studio exec or something like that, you're going to want to have like a verbal pitch first of all. But in that, if you can get somebody interested in your little 30 seconds on the phone or over lunch or whatever, the first thing they're going to ask is, show me the script. At least that's what you're going to get if you're coming at things from the perspective of a screenwriter. Well, I have no script, okay? Short of that, a producer might say, okay, maybe we can link you up with a screenwriter or something like that. Give me a story treatment. And I'm like, I got no story treatment. I've never written one. I started one, and I think I might have already sent it to you. But if not, there's going to be a link to it in this thing I'm going to send it to you with. And there's learning how to make story treatments. And, these things can be novels on their own. I was looking at the story treatment for Terminator, and it was like a 50-page novella about a movie. And then, of course, if you're going to get a script, you're going to spend half a year writing a script all by yourself or whatever, how long it's going to take you. And in my experience, getting anybody to read what I have, a blog post is difficult. So I didn't want to really spend 6 years writing a script or 6 months writing a script that nobody reads, or even, a month writing a story treatment that nobody reads. That's kind of where I'm at, trying to break into getting people to pay attention to this. And now that I'm trying to get people to pay attention to it, I'm like, well, this story means, so much. Like, I see so much in it that could be made out of it. And again, I haven't gotten any feedback or very much feedback on what other people see in it when they look at the blog posts. So as I'm putting together this little document that I'm sending you, I wanted to include a section on like what kind of narrative arcs there are in it. And the document actually I'm titling Project Wonder Woman, and I've referred to that cryptically in, I think, some blog posts and social media posts and stuff like that. And in the last video I sent you, you might have noticed that there's a disproportionate amount of time devoted to a description of Gal Gadot. So like, what the heck does she have to do with, you know, a bicycle trip around Europe and America and whatever? So that said, I want to just talk about some possible narrative arcs that could be made out of it. And I think some of that will be clear to whoever looks at these blog posts that I have. The first arc that I thought would be, if we did some kind of a doc, you know, is this guy a madman or is he a prophet? Because there's a lot of stuff that happens in this that is so weird that I think 9 out of 10 people would think that I'm stark raving mad. But one might say, oh my God, you know, like, I mean, just strange things have happened. If you look at my Facebook posts, you know, I'm ranting about Donald Trump sending Marines to the Middle East or whatever, and I look at the news the next day and Donald Trump sending Marines to the Middle East, you know, so just bizarre stuff that might, you know, make someone think that there's a little bit more going on here than, you know, just some insane guy. But again, somebody's going to have to dig into the material and look at, you know, what's going on and see what they get out of it. And I don't think there's too terribly many people that would be familiar with what they could pull out of it. But yeah, going through the material, there is definitely, is this guy insane or not? Now, the next one is like the homeless wanderer guy finally finding a home, you know, trying to go to Israel, go to Serbia, go to Mexico, go to California, and all this stuff's not working out. And finally, ultimately makes this mammoth trip and ends up getting to where he's going in Israel. Now from there, and I guess, you know, that one probably wouldn't be too terribly hard to pull out of it. But from there, we get into the stuff that actually does pertain to Gal Gadot. So the other one is the superhero aficionado. Ultimately, after going around the world for a year or two, runs into the Wonder Woman actress, gets an autograph from the Wonder Woman actress. And then along with that, and this one I think does resonate with a lot of people, but there's the guy whose soul was destroyed by women, you know, army women, California women, his ex-wife, whatever, problems with his daughter and all that. Ultimately runs into a very famous, wealthy woman, right, that he's been looking for. And I can't actually say I've been looking for Gal Gadot the whole time, you know. I mean, it's there really are a whole lot of reasons I've been doing this, but this is something that could be made out of it. And then finally, along with that, the nameless, faceless Gentile who's been sort of slapped in the face by these Israeli bureaucrats and so on, ultimately goes into Israel and runs into an icon of Israel. And so these three final arcs are related to actually getting in touch with somebody from the Gal Gadot engine. You know, these Hollywooders, they have teams, you know, promoter or something along those lines, public relations specialist, agent, something like that. And actually discussing the feasibility of really getting an autograph from Gal Gadot sometime. And of course, the strange thing for me is I'm trying to make a synchronistic event out of this and make an organized story about this being a 7-year journey. And so I want to get this story wrapped up by October 14th. and time is ticking, and the universe and everybody that I know that knows nothing about any of this is, pretty much trying to stop me and convince me to go live here and do that and live there and do this and whatever. And so, that's basically one of the tasks that I have, and I'll put a little section about that in the document as well. Particularly, I have noticed, again, very few people have given me feedback on the story because very few people have actually read the blog post from beginning to end. What I have is I have all my Strava posts, my fitness app posts documenting where I was with pictures and videos on the bike trip, doing all the bike stuff and a bunch of other crazy stuff along the way. And then every country that I went to, I would turn that into a blog post, which I thought would maybe be a book chapter or the raw material that could form a book chapter or something like that. And here in Cyprus, there's nobody who reads. Nobody that I run into has a second of free time to read a book. And if you ask somebody, hey, read my book, these 16, 17 blog posts or whatever, they're going to tell me that I'm presumptuous for thinking that they have any free time or self-absorbed or whatever. That's been my experience thus far. But the few people that have looked at stuff, and I noticed actually that a couple people looked at, I showed a couple people that first video that I sent you about my life story, and the component that spoke to people mostly, I got some feedback, was about my women problems. And so I really think it's worth doing to try and get Gal Gadot somehow involved in this, just because it's kind of like the Big Lebowski's rug, it ties the whole room together, they say. I mean, yeah, the bike trip is interesting on its own, and a lot of stuff can be done out of that. People would understand that. And most people don't really get the philosophical implications of the story. I mean, I'll send some stuff to some evangelical Christians to take a look at this, and I think I'm writing a story about divine and infernal involvement in human behavior, and they'll just get all bent because there's swear word in it or something, or there's a reference to sex, or there's a reference to drugs or something along those lines. A lot of the underlying meaning that I see in the story, people just miss that completely. But, the guy with the woman problems, getting his woman problems solved over the course of the story somehow, seems like an arc that a lot of people would really identify with. There's just one problem with that. My women problems have not been solved. I don't have a wife or a girlfriend. I've got some blog posts in there about some kooky experiences with trying, and a lot of references to women and so on, near misses or whatever. But there's no big grand romance or whatever that's in this story, but people do seem to get a lot out of the fact that, I've had so many women problems. And, I've noticed that a lot, actually. I remember one time on Facebook, I don't know, I had some issue with some woman, and I was being distracted or something along those lines. And I put on Facebook, God, I just shouldn't have listened to some woman. Now, I wasn't complaining about hating women or whatever. It was just that, it's sort of like it could happen to anyone, right? Like we sent Katie off to college to study and she ran into some boy, like the opposite gender or whatever can, it does often interfere with people's other agendas in life. And so I get a million responses to that, and a lot of them are pretty misogynistic, and a lot of them are, you ugly misogynist. But I wasn't even thinking that at all. I was just thinking about this human condition we have that, sometimes men think about women when, they're not thinking about riding the bike or making the movie or whatever. And this man-woman thing it's a big deal on a lot of people's minds, So because of the fact that I did sort of develop this chivalric fan attachment to Gal Gadot, actually might be one of the arcs that could be brought forward in some kind of a documentary, and that people would relate to. And I think, a bike trip across Europe is really interesting, and weird events are interesting and all that kind of stuff. But, you include an A-list movie star in the end of it. And, it makes it one of these stories like The Blind Side, or the guy that, couldn't even get an autograph from Ray Fisher in Hollywood or whatever, ends up meeting Gal Gadot, that sort of thing. And that is one thing that I'm really going to try and do. And if you know of any way that I can somehow get in touch with someone related to Gal Gadot to really present this seriously, like, hey, I want an autograph from Gal Gadot on October 14th. I'm trying to end this, epic bicycle journey across North America and Europe. And I really think it would put the icing on the cake. And then also, to tell you the truth, and, if any of this gets around, if you tell anybody, I am a big Gal Gadot fan, and I have not met a lot of movie stars. I met Bill Clinton once on the way back from one of my deployments in the airport. I was meeting the soldiers, and I saw Dan Aykroyd from a distance a long time ago and said hi or whatever, waved. But for a guy who spent over a year in Los Angeles trying to write about superhero movies and the Zack Snyder movie phenomenon and stuff like that, I have not met movie stars. And so meeting a movie star, I want to say, meeting a movie star that I have, been following for years and has played a part in my, Don Quixote, madman or prophet or whatever the hell's going on here. That would be like a thing for me. I would really enjoy it. Don't get me wrong about that. But I do want to clarify that, my interest in this is not in any kind of obsessive fan thing. Like I want to go sniff some panties or whatever. Like the thing that's really motivating me to really get serious about this is the fact that I think it would make a brilliant arc out of whatever we come up with. So. I wanted to include this video along with that section of a document that I'm going to send you about my story and what I have going on right now over the next few months. And some of that might be relevant to what we were talking about yesterday with with Alp and whatnot. Okay, because if we do talk to these people, they're gonna probably want to know at some point what I got going on right now. And I am trying to finish up like a pretty big epic thing, at least for me. So, and one of the things on the list is to somehow work an autograph from Gal Gadot in this. And then maybe even, if talking to her publicity people, try and work out, like, is there anything more realistic or more substantial than an autograph, a fan meet kind of a thing? That could come out of it, and I don't know what it would be. Of course, I'm not, interested in hey, Gal, is the maid's quarters in your Tel Aviv apartment available? I'm ready to move in. I'm not trying to do something like that, but I am not considering this a typical obsessive fan sort of thing. What motivated me to do it and get serious about it is the value to the story. And so with that, I thought, hey, I'll go ahead and send this video and add it to the narrative arc section of this document that I'm going to be sending you about the documentary piece. Basically, because another thing that I was thinking yesterday when we were talking about Alp was that if I am going to get sponsored by anybody or go public with anything, like, Bailey's got to get better in front of the camera than he is. I think I can do writing pretty well. I think if somebody gave me a script and I could go over it with the writer and so on, I think I could definitely, as of today, right now, add lines to the characters in that script to make it a lot better. I mean, I do have the writing talent. And I do think also if I ever got into a situation where I thought anybody was really listening to me and it was worth the time, I do think I could write a script. I mean, I've looked at script, I've read books about how to write a script and talked with people about writing a script. And I did run into a guy in New Orleans who is a screenwriter. And if I got with Danny Advocazer or Danny Finkelman or somebody else, somebody that you referred to me or so on, I could become a screenwriter pretty quickly. The thing that's really been holding me back is nobody's listening. So why write a script? Be the guy that's the waiter in Santa Monica for 20 years writing scripts that nobody reads. So getting people listening is actually kind of going on in tandem with getting me going to actually produce material. But the being in front of a camera thing is something that I have very, very little experience with. And it kind of looks like, if I look at the few videos that I made, I'm not terribly good at it. So I did want to send you this. Malcolm Gladwell, an outlier, says that if you want to get good at something, you need to practice. So that's basically what this is. And I'm going to try and put some more videos out about some other things and maybe do some videos with other people and interviewing and all that, in order to be somebody maybe that Alp would want in front of the camera, or any of these guys would want in front of the camera for any reason. And of course that I think would be essential if I'm going to write, be in a documentary about myself. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop this video, and I'll finish up this document about my trip, the Project Wonder Woman thing, and I'll send that to you. And then hopefully by the end of the week, I will get you the document that we talked about the Alp thing. All right, so you have a good week.